Hey Jay, what's going on?
Yes, sir. What's up?
First off, I just want to say that I've been Orthodox for about 2 months so far. I started my Inquirer process just over a year ago,
Awesome.
and you were one of the creators that actually helped me with that. So first off, I just want to thank you for that. And then the second thing that I was going to ask is a question about apologetics in regards to the Council of Florence. So from what I understand, from like reading into the council, because I'm getting into sort of like Catholic apologetics and trying to understand their position, is they like to utilize St. Maximus the Confessor's letter to Marinus as sort of like oh look, there's an Eastern Father that supports our view of the Filioque.
So hold on. Before we go any further, Maximus is not supporting their view of the Filioque. First of all, because Maximus says, why don't we grant them the benefit of the doubt, because they might mean economia. As this doctrine gets formulated in the West of the Council of Lyons, they dogmatically state, no, it does not mean economia. It actually means, as Augustine says in On the Trinity, double eternal hypostatic procession and origin.
Right.
So the letter to Marinus really isn't even relevant anymore, because the debate progresses after Maximus to be a dogmatized filioque position. But in terms of Florence, if I recall, didn't the Latins at Florence not even want to use the letter to Marinus?
From what I've read, I came to figure out that there were some Latin delegates. There's a couple of names. So the first one is Cardinal Julian Cesarini, and then there is a theologian called John of Torquemada, and they explicitly invoked Maximus Confessor's letter to sort of argue their position. And their position was that Maximus said that from the that the Latins were not heretical if, when they say from the Son, they mean through the Son, which is what the Latins argued as proof that the
but that's not referring to double eternal hypostatic procession, which is what the Council of Lyons and Florence define. And that's why the Orthodox response to that argument is the Tomos against John Bekos, because that's what the whole issue is with Bekos.
Okay.
Have you read that yet?
No, actually, no. What I was going to ask you is sort of like if there were any sort of like apologetics books or like church fathers that I can read up on to further support.
Yes. So this is actually from the book that I highly recommend, Crisis in Byzantium, by Papadakis, and it's about the not just Blackernay, but also the theology of Gregory of Cyprus. And there's a section in there that's called the Tomos. It's a famous document called the Tomos against John Bekos. Bekos was a Latinizer who wanted to make this argument, and the Byzantine response is to reject it, because it's not a question of whether you can use the term through the Son. It's a question of, do Lyons and Florence go beyond that and say that the Son is also a co-cause with the Father? And the answer is, of course, yes. So the Byzantine Church said, no, we reject this line of argument from John Bekos.
Right. Yeah, I appreciate that, man. Yeah, I just wanted to sort of like get more like clarification on that.
This book right here is highly, highly necessary for this debate. Crisis in Byzantium by Papadakis is a very important book. And this section that you can read online, the Tomos against John Bekos, I'm pretty sure it's just a chapter from this book.
Okay, I appreciate that. The second thing I was going to say is when they say, oh, well, like most of the Eastern bishops were at Florence and they signed it, and there was only one, and that was St. Mark of Ephesus. Like, they sort of use that as like a majority. And
but that's it's not so what? First of all, it's not all of them.
Yeah, so let me just list this argument's been coming up lately. Oh, you agreed with the Council of Florence, and you're held to it. No, we're not. Like, that's your made-up standard,
right?
And I would say there's several necessary conditions. There could be more, but first of all, it has to for a council to be binding and infallible. It has to be true. Number one, if it's false,
right?
It's not binding. Number two, the entire oikoumenion has to be represented, and so there's a lot of robber councils in which it's not like, for example, the Council of Herrera, which is the iconoclast. Number 3, the bishops have to universally agree because that's the Catholicos. So the representative of Alexandria was St. Mark of Ephesus. He didn't agree, so it's not universal. And number 4, it has to be received by the church. And those are at least, so I don't understand whether well, it's because the papists.
Well, they view it in a papal way.
Magical incantation.
No.
Right?
Well, they think that the Orthodox perspective is that we have 5 heads, and the Roman Church has 1 head, and so if 4 of the 5 heads accept it, then it's true.
Yeah.
But if you notice in the debate with Ubi and Voice of Reason admitted that the decision of a legate isn't binding and isn't equivalent to the actual bishop accepting it. So if the legates come back to their homes and the bishops reject it, that destroys the entire Florence argument.
Yes, exactly. Thanks, Jay.
Right. Yeah. So usually what I would say, I would just ask if this is a fine counter. So to counter that, I would just reference Father Ananias was saying robber councils in ecumenical history, where, for example, the Council of Ephesus in 449, it had episcopal signatures and imperial backing, but it failed because ultimately the majority and the authority doesn't determine truth, like he was saying. So I just kind of wanted to just...
Well, but also there's a notion of reception theory in Orthodoxy and in Catholicism, and like Ubi always points out, the same idea is in Orthodoxy that just because of this or that bishop or patriarch or emperor accepts something doesn't mean that it's therefore true or binding. It has to be received by the rest of the church. So, for example, one reason that the Palamite synods, even though they were local Byzantine synods, are, quote, authoritative for the Orthodox is that they've been accepted throughout the entire canonical Orthodox world. I'm not aware of any Orthodox churches that reject the Palamite synods. So you see how the logic is the same, that if the Palamite synods had happened and the rest of the Orthodox world rejected it, the same principle applies to Florence. Even if you had heretical patriarchs accepting it, there's nothing about patriarch is a canonical title, right? That arises. There's 5 of them. By I don't know, the 600s or 700s. I think it's this by the time of Gregory the Great ish. From the time of Vigilius to Gregory the Great, Rome even eventually accepts that there's 5 patriarchates. So it's an evolving canonical thing, and there's nothing about that necessarily makes it true or false just because 2 or 3 or 4, or perhaps even you could argue even 5 of them. Now Ubi might be of the position that 5 of them makes it binding. Maybe he has an argument that I'm not aware of. I think you could even debate that because there weren't 5 patriarchates at the time of Nicaea, and yet Nicaea is still binding. So you see what I'm saying? It's just because something develops canonically, it doesn't somehow make it the thing that tells you truth, like a papal position.
All right. Thanks, Jay. Christ is risen.
Truly he is. I was looking for this Ostromov book. There's a book that David pointed out a long time ago. I think I have it somewhere, but I don't see it.
Byzantium?
Huh?
What's the name of the author? I might have it.
Ostromov on Florence. Ostrumov.
No, I have another book of his on Byzantium, I think. Yeah, that's a great point. Why would the number guarantee the truth? Shouldn't it be the other way around? The truth guarantees and is manifest through the number.
Well, I think a lot of Roman Catholics they actually think that we have 5 heads and they just have 1, and so somehow I guess if there's 3 or 4 out of the 5, but again, it wasn't. It was just the legates, and then when the legates went back, it was rejected. So there goes that argument.